Milwaukee Bucks trade talks are beginning to escalate as an NBA insider has revealed the Milwaukee Bucks trade plans, and what that report entails may surprise you. We're going to break down the exact report and discuss what it means going forward as John Horst prepares to make some moves. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, we're on the road to 2,000 subscribers. We just hit 1,500. So thank you guys for that. But make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the daily Bucks content. As the Bucks are rolling right now, winning 8 of their last 9, and they're on a good path of an upward trajectory. But speaking of a good path, the Milwaukee Bucks, we have some interesting things that have come out. So an NBA insider has come out and revealed kind of the sentiment right now regarding the Bucks and their the plan for who they're going to look to trade as the deadline approaches and things like that. And you can see this here. Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, and Marjon Beauchamp are the 3 players that the Milwaukee Bucks are looking to move off of at this point. So you can see this here. The Bucks began the season with a 2-8 record, and many executives around the league circling like vultures ready to pounce, hoping that frustrated Giannis at the time would want out if the struggles continued, and if Dame would have joined him, and whether Doc Rivers would remain as head coach. Since then, tensions have calmed as Milwaukee has been able to right the ship for now, but the Bucks hope that the expected return of Chris Middleton will continue to push them in a positive direction. So that's obviously the context of executives. We knew that executives were feeling a certain type of way about how this Milwaukee Bucks team was playing out. They were hoping they'd be able to pounce and maybe land a Giannis Antetokounmpo. We know that throughout the start of the regular season, when they were 2-8 and the team was really struggling, there was tons of rumors about how Giannis wants out and how teams are waiting to pounce and trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Ultimately, didn't come to fruition, and now the Bucks are back like I projected them to be, right in the middle of the Eastern Conference in a playoff picture and kind of spearheading a playoff race right now. But some interesting things, and you can see this here. Executive John Horst has aggressively worked the phones on the trade market and will continue to do so through February. After winning the finals, Milwaukee has taken a step backwards, with Giannis turning 30 in December, and of course we all know the aging core of Lillard, Middleton, and Lopez. And Portis is also turning 30. Many around the league believe the Milwaukee Bucks championship window is nearing a close if it hasn't already. And veterans Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton have been mentioned as the top trade candidates by executives across the league for a couple of years, including at the start of this season, but both have survived to this point. So as you look at the Milwaukee Bucks and where they currently stand among Eastern Conference teams, but also just regarding their trade chips, they obviously have been open about wanting to trade Marjon Beauchamp. They've been open about potentially trading Pat Connaughton as well. Bobby Portis has been the one guy that has kind of stayed quiet. We've seen some reports that the Bucks are looking to keep Bobby Portis. We've seen some reports saying that they want to get rid of him. But regardless of that, it seems like at this point the Milwaukee Bucks are open to moving Bobby Portis and they're open to moving Pat Connaughton. And when you're looking at, and we'll dive into a couple trades here in a minute, but as you look at what the landscape of the team is looking like right now, Bobby Portis has been playing fine off the bench. He still, struggles immensely with defense, but he is a great rebounder at times, and he's a very good bench scorer. That's kind of his role, and that's what he provides. And Portis is making $12.58 million. Connaughton's making $9.42 million, and they're on the books for a combined $22 million this season with player options. And again, we've seen Portis have a statistical dip in his three-point shooting, but his scoring and rebounding are on par. Like, he's giving you exactly what you kind of expect. It's just his lack of defense is heightened now because of the fact that they, of course, got rid of Drew Holiday 2 seasons ago. And Damian Lillard, of course, isn't a great defender, albeit very good offensively. And Connaughton has kind of just turned into just a rough player at this point. Worst shooting season. His defense has really taken a step back. We've seen his help defense be lackluster at times as well, like even the basics. But at the end of the day, I think at some point a big deal is going to go down involving one of these 3 guys, and most likely there's a world where they keep Bobby Portis, but I also think it's kind of on what happens with the other big men around the league. Like, if they can go ahead and trade for a guy like Robert Williams or a guy like Walker Kessler to give them a more athletic, defensive-minded, rebound-minded big man off the bench, then they can be more open to moving Bobby Portis, maybe in a deal for one of those guys or outside of a deal for one of those guys. And there's also 24-year-old wing Marjon Beauchamp, who had his option declined, as we know, making him a prime candidate to be traded. And that came out by Hoops Hypes, and we've known that a while ago. It's when the Hoops Hype article originally dropped regarding Marjon Beauchamp, you're thinking, hey, he does need a change of scenery. The Bucks, there's no room for him now, especially with guys coming up and, at least at the start, starting to play well with Ryan Rollins. He's kind of been playing less as of late. AJ Green, who's developed, albeit he's only 25 years old, but he's turning into actually a very solid role player. You have Andre Jackson Jr., who's been starting the majority of the games for the Bucks and providing some athleticism, some defense, some slashing. Things are starting to look like, for Pat Connaughton even and Marjon Beauchamp, there's definitely no more room for specifically Marjon, but even Pat Connaughton is having his minutes taken up. And they also have, of course, Gary Trent Jr., who comes off the bench at this point, was signed to that 1-year deal. He's probably not going to be a part of their future beyond this season, but if he can come back and continue to play well, like his upside at this point is higher than Pat Connaughton. So we've seen times where Gary Trent Jr. has played very well. We've seen him, throughout seasons and throughout this year, and there's been times where he's been cold. So I think at this point, it's inevitable that these three guys are going to be, one of them at least, are going to be on the move out, and it's an interesting proposition to kind of go over here, especially as you think of guys like Robert Williams, you think of guys like Walker Kessler. There's a lot of other trade options at the deadline that they can go for, and as the deadline approaches, I think Pat Connaughton's time is up, and you look at the Bucks' record without Pat Connaughton on the floor, and it's very good. On games where he didn't play, in games where Doc gave him the DNP. So it's interesting. It's going to be curious to see what Doc Rivers continues to do with their minutes, and of course what John Horst ultimately decides to do. But one article dropped, and it's just a little proposed mock trade here, and I'm curious to see what you all think about it. Bucks add more versatility defense via behind the buck pass. So simply Larry Nance for Bobby Portis, and this one is super interesting. And scouting for ways to patch the Milwaukee Bucks hole in the front court beyond the buck pass. Own Tyler Schickert crafted this deal, and you're basically getting a power forward in Larry Nance who is a better rebounder, a better defender, and is more athletic. You're basically just trading some certainty on the offensive end and some floor spacing, because Larry Nance is not as good of a floor spacer compared to Bobby Portis, and you're giving up some of that floor spacing in exchange for, of course, Bobby Portis, and the Hawks would get a more veteran leadership guy. But like, if you're the Bucks, I don't hate this deal either. You get Larry Nance. He's probably not quite as good as Bobby Portis in certain ways, but when you're looking at what the Bucks need, they don't necessarily need scoring. They've gotten a lot of that, and especially if Gary Trent Jr. can continue to provide some of the scoring that he has shown flashes. Scoring is not a huge problem for this Milwaukee Bucks team, so getting a guy like Larry Nance who can actually help with the rebounding, help with defending, to a degree at least, he's still not a great defender, could be very interesting going forward, and ultimately will be an interesting trade. And I think a trade like this is possible, where you give up Bobby and you're getting just a center that fits your bench in a more prominent role and a more seamless role regarding the transition to, of course, transitioning to a Dame and Giannis centered and centric offense. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. It's a very interesting package. I figured I'd throw it in there. And also let me know what your thoughts are on, of course, the trade update. And before I wrap up, the Bucks are now 4-9. We see that tweet from November 15th. I thought it was interesting. They tweeted about our 6-game win streak, and it kind of goes back to my video yesterday, like the disrespect for this team. They love, talking about the Bucks when they're down, but every time they start to come up, and they're playing well now, it's crickets around that. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, look at the schedule ahead. They play the Hawks tomorrow. They play the Detroit Pistons tonight, and then you of course have Boston. So there's a lot of different ways to go ahead and win this game. Tonight, of course, against the Pistons, who are not quite as bad as they used to be, so it's still going to be a bit of a battle, but hopefully the Bucks will take care of business as Chris Middleton nears a return. And make sure to hit the subscribe button. Your guys' support is unbelievable. See you later.